Welcome into another edition. This is Cross Functionality. Thank you for joining us. The show, the podcast connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female, hosted by former college baseball and softball players. Thank you for joining us today. Episode 61. We're talking strategy for playing the best when it matters the most. In other words, being clutch. It's a fun little topic as the World Series just ended. The baseball season is now complete, and we enter into the off season, not only working on our physical traits, but also hopefully our mental acuity as well for all of our players and coaches out there listening. So thank you again for joining us today, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, on YouTube as well, the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. To watch the show, let me bring in my friend and co-host, softball national champion at the University of Alabama and current day renowned coach, Cassie Reilly-Boccia. What's going on, Cass? How are you?
I'm doing well. Funny you just mentioned mental acuity. I've been trying to hack my concentration grids, and I think I just beat my best time. I
you did.
I got it in under 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was right. You know what? It was like recently. I don't remember exactly college. I think I would average around 6 minutes, and it was more of a red flag if I was really high. Like if all of a sudden it took me 7.5, 8 minutes. And again, it's relative, right? Everyone's going to complete it different ways. I had people who could get it done in 3 minutes, no problem. But if they got 5 minutes, that was their red flag, right? So, anyway, I started listening to, I tried to do a relaxed eye focus. I try to do an eye test, just trying to relax my focus, and did listen to 40 Hertz by binaural beats. So no words, and got my 5 minutes today. So I'll test that out again and see if it works.
Yeah, we did we talked about concentration grid way back when, so go back in the archives and find it somewhere. I don't know, you might have to start from episode 1 and just go through every episode until you find the segment where we talked about concentration grids. I don't mean to one up you here, but I did last weekend. I walked 3 miles, my record time. I feel like Pat Murphy when I walk, because Pat walks a lot, Coach Murph there in Alabama. I like to walk once a week on Sundays just to kind of get the lactic acid out and just get the legs moving a little bit. It's nice weather, right? 3 miles last week. I did it in 46:50, 46 minutes 50 seconds.
You were booking it.
I was power walking.
Wow. And they say if you're just walking on average, about a mile is 20 minutes. So that's impressive.
Right. Thank you. I have an app that helps keep helps me keep pace and time. I don't stop either. You know how you go across the crosswalk? I have to cross the street to complete the 3 miles, and I don't usually use the crosswalk if it's a red light. I strategize. I keep moving, and I sort of kind of weave and snake my way through traffic so I don't have to stop. Because I did stop one week, and I ended up I missed a minute. It cost me a minute of time, and I'm not doing that again. So if I'm not here next week, and you don't know, I probably got hit by a car because I'm trying to snake through traffic, trying to beat my now 46:50 time. So I'm just going
record-breaking week.
Right, baby steps. 40 next week. This week is going to be 46, hopefully 40, and then next week when we talk to you again, hopefully I can say, well, this week I'm going for 46:30. So your record, 5 minutes on the concentration grid this morning.
Yeah. Very good. 4:59 I got. Yeah.
Wow.
Right under.
Wow. So what was your record in college when you would
do that? I really do think it was right around 6 minutes. I don't think maybe I'd get a little less than 6 minutes, but I usually didn't deviate that much. Okay. For some reason today, it just felt like I was booking it.
Now explain. Let's go back. Let's explain what do you use concentration grids for, and how can athletes use them as they go into the off season and improve their mental traits?
Sure. I think what I use it for is I like to do it before practices, especially if I was, I had a really busy day of classes, and as a student athlete, you have other stuff going on. You might be in a committee, you might have volunteer work, whatever. To just try to reset my focus, because it really only takes 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long. And the other thing too is you don't have to finish a concentration grid. You can use it to just be almost a form of meditation. So if you're someone who tries to sit and meditate and feels yourself getting distracted, it is a different type of meditation. In college, I had the physical copy of a concentration grid. So from 0 to 99, and you just go and you try to check off in order. And it's funny because if you are high stressed, you'll feel tension, you'll almost feel like you're trying to scan every box. And then what you want to try to work on, or at least what I tried to work on, was getting that happy medium of a relaxed body and a relaxed mind. And then my eyes would start to relax and I start to just get into this a little bit of a flow state and trying to do it. So that's what I use it for. And then there's always that little bit of internal competitiveness too that I'll use it for now. But, leading up to a podcast where I'm transitioning off of work and I'm going into something different, I'll try to spend time doing the concentration grid. Or if maybe I've been working for an hour, I took a 15-minute break and I'm going to sit back down again. Maybe I'll do another concentration grid now. But certainly athletes to just, bring a little more self-awareness to how do you concentrate? What helps? You can test yourself to add music. Let's say, you're playing in a stressful game this weekend. Add distractions and see if you can still maintain that soft focus and that relaxed posture. Try it on planes, try it in public areas, and just start to test yourself. And that'll start to kind of get your just awareness and control of your internal mechanism, I guess, how you're feeling, how you're doing, how you're focusing. So I know it's long-winded, but I think that's kind of what I use it for and what athletes can use it for now.
Yeah, and they're easy to find too. All you have to do is just Google concentration grids.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's, you know what? Here, I'll do it right now for everybody. This is more of an audio.
There's an online one too. So if you want to just do it on your computer, you can do it on your phone. I have a little harder time.
There has to be an app. Okay, so here you go. Concentrationgrids.com. There's literally a website for it.
There you go.
So athletes, you have no excuse not to try the.
And see if it works. See if it's something that works for you, for sure.
Well, you need concentration. Stupid segue to what we're talking about today, episode 61, strategies for playing your best when it matters the most. And there's a couple of points here. We're going to get into some of the mental stuff as well. But really, again, a lot of this has to do with just playing and being clutch at the right time. And this, again, pertaining to baseball and softball. But there is a difference between being clutch and being lucky, right? Clutch is obviously, I don't know how much those two intertwine with one another. I think they are very, very separate. But there is a huge difference between actually being clutch, a player being clutch, and then the player just getting lucky.
Yeah, you know what? And a lot of what we're going to talk about today, too, I ended up, maybe I already intuitively knew, but I at least was able to put words to what I was thinking and feeling through a book called Clutch. And one of the greatest things was listen, you play long enough, you're going to have opportunities where it ends up happening and you get lucky. The true determining factor of clutch is, are you setting yourself up for success in all those moments? It's not always going to happen. You're never going to have this like perfect record of hitting every game-winning buzzer beater or hitting every really close putt, but all of a sudden you start to set yourself up for success in those moments. And we'll talk about, ways that it seems like professional athletes have done it and what's worked for us. But you set yourself up for success in those moments. And then all of a sudden you start to string along multiple moments. And that's when you start to get an athlete that's like, well, hey, they're clutch because they show up a majority of the time in those brightest lights, in those biggest moments. Whereas it's not just a one-off thing or a couple times here and there that it happens.
Well, you mentioned in there, though, setting yourself up for consistent success. I think that's how you get lucky. That's how you become clutch, because you're setting yourself up, whether it's through power of visualization, whether it's the mental side, staying in the present, staying in the moment. You're setting yourself up for that success, for that luck, by being consistent and understanding what you need to do and just living in the present at that moment.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, so many times you'll see athletes who are clutch, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago, Derek Jeter's last at bat at Yankee Stadium, and it almost was surreal to see such a high energy environment and to see him so calm and relaxed. And it was because he had worked so hard to do, practice how he plays, stay as present as possible. What's my job? What's important right now, right? What's important now? There was a runner on second base and he was trying to hit the ball opposite field, right? That was it. So he comes through in the clutch, right? Everyone around him thinks it's coming through in the clutch. He's just doing his job. He's doing what he was supposed to. He's doing what he's done every day. So when you start to practice with that intensity and you start to put yourself in those situations in your mind, then all of a sudden you're not showing up to really high energy. Your energy isn't matching what's going on. You're just showing up to do what you have done every day. So it doesn't feel clutch. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, all the lights are on me. Oh my gosh, this is such a big moment. It just feels like, no, this is my job. Hit the ball up the field. That's it. And then, afterwards, those emotions can come flooding towards you. But the only other thing I can think of is when I was playing in the national championship game, it was top of the 7th inning, 2 outs. We're up by 1 run. National Player of the Year is up at the plate. And everyone's talking to our team after the fact, like, man, how were you feeling in that moment? And it was, well, I was feeling like we had to get 1 out because she was just the next batter, right? It wasn't that big of a deal. We were just so ingrained to be so present of, win this pitch, good, now do it again. Win this pitch, good, now do it again. There was no pitch that weighed heavier than another.
Yeah. You mentioned something in there as well. When it comes to being clutch, you kind of alluded to it. It almost like for somebody like a Derek Jeter, it almost becomes natural to them. It's just kind of, they don't look at a situation and say to themselves, I have to be clutch, or look at a situation and say, this is a big moment, I need to come through. They're confident enough, players like him, and I can point out players from every sport, they're confident enough to know that they can come through and that they're living so much in the present that they don't look at it as being clutch. They just look at it as another moment where they have to do their job, albeit maybe a little bit of a different type job, right? And a little bit of tweaking when it comes to that job. But they understand that, hey, this is what I've got to do, and this is it. They don't let that moment really get to them mentally, and they don't put too much pressure on themselves.
Yeah, I have to imagine, when you think of the Michael Phelps, the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans, Derek Jeters, when you think of those athletes, so many of them have talked about either visualizing their success before it happens. Kobe Bryant is another great example too. But I think what happens is when you can get really deep into that visualization, when you can really put yourself in those situations, again, you're desensitizing yourself to how big that moment is. And so when you're actually under the lights, when it's actually time to make the buzzer beat your shot, or the putt to win everything, that it doesn't, you don't get the butterflies, you don't get the increase in tightness in your hand and the traps that raise, because you've already put yourself in that position. I mean, not just thought about it, really visualized and put yourself in that situation. And now it's no big deal. I've experienced this 1,000 times before. I've succeeded in my head 1,000 times before. And now I'm doing what I've already thought about doing,
Yeah.
And I think that becomes so important. I don't think we give our body enough credit for the response that happens and how much it can affect our sport. For instance, when you get that adrenaline that starts to pump through your system, the flexors in your body will naturally tighten. So things that are flexors are your fingers and your grip. So that's why your grip will start to tighten even just a little bit. You'll actually, your flexors can be, your pec is a flexor that'll start to round your chest forward a little bit. And now you get these situations where this is not a confident person. First of all, I'm not standing as tall as I can, but anything you have to grip, a baseball, a pitcher holding a baseball hitter holding a bat, a golfer holding a club, that little bit of tension matters so much. So now we have this huge moment. I haven't worked on my visualization. I'm not as present. My adrenaline is pumping more than I need it to. And now I'm getting a physiological response that is affecting my movement patterns. That is not going to set me up for success, no matter how hard I try in this moment.
Yeah. Again, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page as well for the video version of the show, video clips. Follow us on social media at Jim Tara on both X and Twitter, and Instagram, and Coach Cassie RB on Twitter, Coach_Cassie RB on Instagram. Talking about the power of visualization. What are some visualization cues that you used in college that you've taken into your coaching career to this day that have worked when it comes to athletes being clutch?
I think the biggest thing I noticed is we had a team of about anywhere from 18 to 20. Mm-hmm. And they would bring in performance psychologists, and our coaches did such a good job of exposing us to so many different forms of meditation. And what I realized is I had some athletes who couldn't lay there and go through a guided meditation of a sports psychologist walking you onto a field and feeling that. And then you had some athletes who we would watch the World Series. We would watch moments where, honestly, with a heart rate monitor hooked up to us, moments we failed in big big opportunities, even if it was in practice, moments that we didn't do well, to get our heart rate up high and then work on calming it down, putting your head down, and then visualizing it again, visualizing that exact moment happening again and finding success instead. So that is a very direct, that's like a lot of work to get to those feelings and those emotions. So I think just as a coach, if you're working with athletes, realizing that not everyone is going to visualize the exact same way, you might need to add these prompts, such as videos. You might need to work on them through guided work, or maybe it's a worksheet where you hand out to your team and you're saying, "Hey, close your eyes, think about this." Good. You open your eyes again, reset. We're going to think about this moment now. So you're handing them some type of guide, because I think it's very, very difficult. I don't know if it's just the age, if it's just our world in general. I don't even know if it's a generational thing, but I think we are all so much more distractible now. Everyone's attention, because of social media or just because of how life works, is so much harder to hold. So to sit there and expect an athlete to just, hey, go through 5 minutes of powerful visualization, like, yes, they need to practice with it, but it's very, very difficult, I think, for someone to not get frustrated or not be able to really hone in on that skill.
What were some other ways that you were clutch? What are some things that you did personally in college that, or your teammates did, that helped them become more clutch?
I think there, at least, and Jim, we were talking about this a little bit before the recording started, but it almost seemed like the most humble athletes, and that doesn't mean that they were good, but the most humble athletes ended up showing up in the biggest moments. And one of my teammates, who's now the assistant coach at Alabama, Kayla Bro, always had a tendency to show up in big, big moments. And it was funny because when you watched her practice, she said, "I always wanted to practice like I was the worst player on the team, and I wanted to play like I was the best player in the country." And it was interesting, like this dichotomy that she had. It was very easy for her to walk on the field as a practice player, thinking she had everything in the world she had to work on. And then very easy for her to walk into a game thinking she was SHIT and no one could touch her. And
Yeah.
she had like these two alter egos essentially that she would tap into depending on if she was practicing or playing. And I thought that was so fascinating to watch. And she made a 10-year career of being an ESPN analyst. And I saw the same kind of alter ego show up where it was off camera in practice. She was, again, "Oh my God, I'm a student. There's so much I have to work on." And then all of a sudden, actual, like not even figuratively, literally, the bright lights show on, you're on ESPN. And it was, boom, she's the best. In her head, she was the best reporter that anyone was watching. So it's neat. It was like, it was almost like this like alter ego that I don't know how else to put it.
But you made you made a great point there, and this could be a great mindset for everybody out there. Practice like you're and have the mindset of that you're the worst player on the team, and you're expendable, and they can get rid of you tomorrow, because that would force you to practice correctly and do everything correctly, not just the little things, and approach it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we used to say too, like, I think we came back from a doubleheader against Tennessee, and we had just won. We didn't play great. We had just beat them. And I remember showing up at practice, and I was like, if we lost those 2 games, we would have very different energy right now. We'd be like pissed off. We need to practice like we just lost, not like, "Oh, okay, we're good." We should practice like we suck. Or
Yeah.
that we're losing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just such an interesting mentality. And we started to flip the switch of like, started to get pissed off that teams could even think they could beat us, and that was so. Yeah, if you can start to adopt that mentality in training, because again, so many kids come to sessions and they're like, "Well, I'm in a slump, blah, blah, blah. That's why I'm here." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Why can't we have this mentality of wanting to get better even when you're playing well? Why do you have to wait till you're in the slump for that to happen?" So I do think that that mentality surrounding your preparation is huge for you to actually be able to show up in those big moments.
So I can relate a little bit. I went to the batting cage the other night. I want to thank Dr. Steve, by the way, here in Tampa for the hospitality. And I hit with a couple of pro guys that I know, friends with, whatever. And I literally went in there with the mindset as a 34-year-old hitting with, kids in their 20s, right? Mid-20s. One kid I think was 19, right? So he was, I mean, hey, if you don't feel old yet, he wasn't even born in the 90s. You and I had a whole decade to the 90s to ourselves. He wasn't even born in the 90s. But these are pro guys, pro players. I literally went in there with the mindset of I am the worst one in here. So I have nothing to lose. So try to at least just, it made me think, just try not to swing and miss. Try to just hit line drives. And that's what I felt like I did. Especially when I was hitting off that hack attack machine. But nonetheless, that was what I'm talking about, the hack attack machine. Not easy. But that was my mindset going in. I thought I did okay. I don't know. And maybe that mindset's not for everybody, but I think that you're maybe rewording it differently is probably better. But at the same time, same token, I think that's important to sort of maybe think, okay, I'm, or something along the lines of, I'm the worst player on the field right now. I need to get better at or maybe not even that, just say I need to get better at every single thing. I'm not just good at hitting. I'm not just good at this. I'm not just bad at this. I need to get better at every single thing. It's very, very important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even it helps too with, because you're gonna have coaching guided practice, but then you're gonna have your own practice too, that when you hit off a tee. And are you sitting there to just hit off a tee to make you feel good all the time? Or are you working on your weaknesses? Or if you're an athlete who really needs to put more work on defense, are we defaulting to the tee because it's what we like? Or do we really need to go practice our backhands with tennis balls against the wall?
Yeah. I think too, I was in the cage the other night and I was, thinking this too. On front toss flips, I always like away, middle away. And helps me think, let the ball get deep. I'm not trying to pull any cage bombs, right? I'm just trying to, hit line drives. Again, 34 years old here, whatever. I, take it for what it is. But I think that sometimes with athletes, there needs to be that singular focus on what they're doing in that moment, with whether they're hitting off the hack attack machine, whether they're doing front flips in the cage, baseball or softball. They need to understand, I think, that what they're actually not just going through the motions and saying we're working hard here. They need to actually stick to a real plan, however big, however small it might be, and go with that. I.e., again, throw me middle away, flip me middle away. Let me let the ball get deep. Let me go, to the opposite corner of the cage or, to the opposite field in the cage as well. And not try to pull the ball and hit those proverbial cage bombs, which everybody likes to do.
Yeah. Well, I think too, so just made me think, when you're structuring practices as coaches or a parent, whatever it may be, adding in those stressful situations. So having a round where it's like, hey, we're trying to hit the ball middle. Now we're trying to hit opposite field. Now it's a situation we got to pull, try to hit a sack fly, whatever it may be. And then last round is, all right, 3-2 count, bases loaded. Let's go. You got one pitch, or trying to think, we had situations where you had four people on your mini team and you were down by one and you had to try to tie the game in the seventh. And so first girl gets on, you bunt her, so it's trying to add those pressure situations, or you have situations where the entire team is on the line, on the first base line, and it's, hey, there's a suicide squeeze right now. You have to get this bunt down. And if you don't, the whole team is sprinting to the outfield wall and back again. So now you have this added pressure, right? So again, just ways to make practice a little more pressure filled. Not that it has to be like that all the time. You don't want to have a practice where the player is stressed for an hour and a half straight, but adding moments like that, I think, are huge because, shoot, you show up in a game, you want to be like, I've already done this in practice. Practice is way harder than the game.
Yeah. All right. We'll get to the mental side here. And talking about, staying in the moment, being present. I do wonder, and I'm going to point out A-Rod here, and kind of compare him and Derek Jeter for context purposes. Both great players, certainly, but one was more clutch than the other. I don't think there's any denying that. And their personalities were polar opposite. Why do I bring up their personalities? I think with A-Rod, again, I think many times he got a bad rap. I think that a lot of times, the things he said, I don't think he meant a certain way, just came out a certain way. From a PR standpoint, it probably made you cringe, but I don't think he meant to offend anybody. I don't think that he meant to say the things that he did and for people to take it a certain way. Derek Jeter never had a misstep when it came to talking to the media, when it came to saying things in public. Derek Jeter was a lot more clutch than Alex Rodriguez, sans 2009. I do wonder if there is a correlation. I haven't done any research on this, but I do wonder mentally if there's a correlation to your mental side, certain things that you say in public. I don't want to say lack of self-awareness, because it's not exactly that, but it is some lack of awareness there, and how it translates to you as a player being clutch. And you and I talked about it before we started, maybe it's staying in the moment and being present, and that's part of the issue.
Yeah, it is interesting to think of it, and it might not be able to tell the whole story, and I'm sure for each situation it's a little different, but actually this book that I had referenced talked an entire chapter about A-Rod and how interesting, like here's an athlete who could have easily gone down as one of the best baseball players ever, but when people talk about him now, they talk about his missteps or how he didn't come up when he maybe needed to. So the way that this author presented it, and I thought it was pretty interesting, was that in order to be clutch, you have to be as present as possible. And I talked about that a little bit in the beginning, where it's this pitch is no bigger than any other pitch. This at bat is no bigger than any other at bat. I'm just here to do my job. But if we're struggling with being present, then all of a sudden we get into the box when the lights are on, and we're like, ooh, this could solidify me into the Hall of Fame. This could really put my mark on things. So now you're thinking about the future. You're thinking about what could happen in the future instead of this moment. Or maybe you're riddled by past failures, and you can't let go of those. So you get into a big moment, and instead of thinking about this pitch, you're thinking about, well, I struck out last time, I didn't come through last time, whatever it may be. So those are all affecting you. If that is the case of someone, and we're seeing this happen on the field, it is pretty easy to think that, hey, when he gets into an interview, maybe he's, instead of just focusing on responding, he is focusing on, well, maybe I should be saying this, or maybe I want to say the right thing, because he just might not be present in that interview. So who knows? Maybe that is part of why the words aren't coming out the right way, or his performance is not happening the right way when those lights are on. But I just think, gosh, in all areas of your life, practicing being present and not being too distracted, and being able to hone in on what you're doing. Even a conversation with someone, you realize how much more intentional you can be about what you say, how you say, your body language, than when you have a phone to your side that you're distracted with, or you're thinking of something else that you're distracted with. It's very hard for our brain, I think, to do two things at one time.
Yeah, I always wondered what again, preparing for this show, especially though, wondering what it is there's got to be some sort of mental connection as to why somebody in baseball, and there's plenty of examples of it. Just pointed out A-Rod because he was one of the biggest stars, certainly when we were growing up, of our generation. And again, I don't want to take that away from him. He should be a Hall of Famer, and there's a reason that he's hit so many home runs that he has. And I'm not saying that he has compiled stats either. There is a big difference. But there's something there mentally. There has to be something there mentally that correlates with why somebody physically cannot come through in the biggest and clutch moments at that time. And some people, by the way, some players have been really, really clutch, and that's it. They've just been clutch in certain moments, the biggest moments when the lights shine brightest, and then other players, and then other times they're not. Which is,
who's the St. Louis guy? I'm blanking on his name. There's a St. Louis Cardinal. He was born and raised in St. Was it him? He just denied going into the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame, right?
David Freese.
Okay, that's right. So he came up huge this one World Series. Everyone was talking about him. He crushed it, but he didn't have this outstanding career. And they went to offer him, I guess, a spot in the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame, and he turned it down because he said, listen, I understand I had that one moment, but this should be reserved for Cardinals who have strung together a really impressive career. And I thought that was so interesting and humbling. And there it goes again, a really humbled athlete who also came up clutch. It is there, there is probably something to it. But Jim, I feel like if people figure out what that is, that's going to be the new Moneyball stat that everyone gets recruited.
So you're saying that you and I are like Billy Beane, Paul Podesta, right? Is that who it was? I'm trying to look up David Freese stats here. Okay. So again, to to your point, for further context purposes, he's a career 277 hitter, right? So he's a, just good player, right? Not a Hall of Famer. Although hitting career 277, and as a Cardinal, let's see what he hit. I don't know, he hit 286 in his 5 years in St. Louis. I think that maybe he's denying himself a pretty cool Hall of Fame induction there with the Cardinals. I don't understand that. He hit 286 in 5 years with St. Louis. That's pretty good. I'm trying to look here postseason wise. Can't find it postseason. I'll have to do it some other time. But yeah, you're exactly right though. I mean, 277, career hitter, good player, but when the lights were really the brightest, I mean, he saved the Cardinals season, saved the World Series for them in 2011. Obviously, he went on to be the MVP, but that's a perfect example right there. Someone who is clutch in really clutch moments, and at other times is probably just a decent and good player.
Right. Not the A-Rod.
Yeah, not A-Rod. Right. All right. So, again, as we wrap up today's episode 61, strategies for playing the best when it matters the most. Again, coming through in the clutch, some quick pointers, some quick notes for players out there and how they can prepare to be in the clutch and then come through in the biggest moments.
Sure. I'd say first, if you're a reader, I would check out Clutch by Paul Sullivan. I read that my junior year of college, and I think that really changed my perception of big moments. I think start desensitizing yourself to those moments, whether that's you try to find a visualization technique that works for you. It's going to be like anything. It's not going to you're not going to do it the first time and feel super comfortable and confident in doing it. But the more times you do it, the more time you set aside for it, the more you figure out what works for you, the more powerful that tool becomes for you. And then I would start to adopt that staying present in the moment. Start challenging yourself in practice to get out of that moment, I guess. So in practice, how can I get challenged enough to start to get distracted or to have tension or to have things that might deter me from the present moment, and then practice bringing yourself back? Because I say this to my athletes all the time. It's not impressive if I make your practice easy enough for you to stay present the entire time. What I'm trying to do is push you out of the present into an anxious moment, let's say, and the true practice is you pulling yourself back. And the more times you can work on pulling yourself back, then all of a sudden it gets easier and easier and easier, and it doesn't take as long, and the way for you to do it becomes very clear and easy. So, and maybe the last thing too is the Caleb Rowe technique. Is start practicing an alter ego of being the worst player on the field during practice, and then step into your alter ego of being the absolute best when it comes to game time.
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. Hopefully, we'll get to talk to her about that sometime later down the line.
Yeah.
The future of cross-functionality. Next week, episode 62, we're going to talk athletes scouting and preparation. I know you did a lot of that when you were at Alabama, a lot of scouting and a lot of preparation. I would love to hear.
I didn't know how to do it until college. Yeah, so I'm excited.
I want to hear next week these differences between college baseball scouting reports and the ones that you used to get on the softball side, how different they were. Some of the contents when you're preparing for opponents, how you applied that to your game and applied that to your approach offensively and the 4-bats you were going to get, your teammates were going to get. Because I would imagine they're different. The scouting reports today are probably different from the ones we had back then in, but now in 2023, going into 2024. But there are some key differences, I think, on softball scouting reports and baseball scouting reports at the collegiate.
Probably, yeah.
So we'll talk about that next week, episode 62. Do you have anything coming up you want to promote?
No, you know what? Actually, I lied. I finally do. We have I've talked about the drill library forever. We have those 500 hitting drills, but we also have 2 mental performance courses that are coming to fruition. So if you're someone who wants to check out, we have one that's short and sweet, about 30 minutes of content to just kind of take you through some mental performance skills. And then if you're a team or you're a coach or a parent who's trying to find something to maybe do with their team, or I have an 8-hour lecture one. So it's 8 1-hour lectures that are based off of the different mental performance. There's different recordings with teams. So if you want to take a really big, deep dive, there's a mental performance option for either there.
All
You can
right.
find all that and link in my bio and all that.
All right. Very good. And be sure to follow us on social media at Jim Tara, at Coach Cassie RB on Twitter, and at Coach Cassie _RB on Instagram. Thank you very much for joining us. Email us to your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, and we will talk to you